Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Nye, and I am very excited to talk to you about the opportunity to coach baseball in Marshall for the 2025 season. So, currently, I am the business and marketing teacher, one of the two at Sauk Prairie High School. It's my first year here, and 6 years prior to that, I was in the same position, which also included middle school sections at Tomahawk High School. Was also the varsity head coach there for 4 of the 6 years that I spent in Tomahawk. The first couple of years I was there, I was the JV coach, and that came in just ahead of the COVID year. Started in Tomahawk in the fall of 2018. The year prior to that, I spent in Oconto as business and marketing teacher, both at the middle and high schools. Also was the varsity assistant for Adam Tim for the spring of 2018. The 5 years prior to that, I was the varsity head coach at New Holstein High School. The last 4 of those years, I transitioned out of the private sector and into education as business and marketing teacher. The fall of 2013 through the spring of 2017 was business and marketing at the high school in New Holstein. And prior to that, coaching-wise, I had spent the previous 5 years to New Holstein as a varsity assistant at Fond du Lac Springs. And the majority of the years that I was an assistant at Springs, I worked in nonprofit management for the Boy Scout Council in Appleton, worked for both the Fond du Lac area district, and then took a promotion which found me in Manitowoc, Sheboygan County area for the remainder of the years that I was in nonprofit, and that's where I lived during my time working in New Holstein. Prior to that, out of college, I have a broadcasting degree, worked in Mayville, Waupun, and Fond du Lac areas from about 2000 through 2006. That was prior to the transition to nonprofit management. While I worked for the radio station out of Mayville that the company in Fond du Lac, Radio Plus, owned, I was an American Legion coach in Oconomowoc, where I grew up and played my high school ball. Coached Junior and Senior Legion there, and in 2004 had the opportunity to interview for and have the chance to coach. My first varsity experience at North Fond du Lac was there 2004 through 2007. Got the desire to be a coach really from my high school coach, Pat Neary in Oconomowoc, who's a WBCA Hall of Famer. I respected him. However, at that time, being younger, I thought there were things that I could do better, and that as long as I was willing to grow and learn and challenge myself, that I could do as good or a better job. And that's kind of, at the time early on, what fed my desire to coach. I have a coaching minor, and once I got into the minor classes, that's what got me going. Had the chance to assist a couple of years in college as well at Oshkosh West for Tony Gerhardt and Dan Chelowinski at the freshman level. So as far as everything that I do sending a message, the messages that I want to be able to send to students and the community and those that the baseball program affects throughout the community, my first and foremost that I want to accomplish is establishing consistent communication in an effort to serve students, their interests, and the interests of the community as it relates to baseball. There's a lot of ways that I would work to do this. So one, that would include weekly messaging to both players and to their parents. That would start about the second or third week of February. Establish communication with the teachers of the players that I would have, and do that regularly, particularly to keep an eye on both their behavior and academic performance and improvements, to hold them accountable for that part of their life, both as people in the classroom and learners, and academically as well. I would expect to be present at any and all open gyms. That would go on as soon as, if it's me, get the chance to make that call. Past history, from what I have gleaned, those have happened on Sundays. I'd easily be able to make that happen. The communicating with the youth programs, particularly Matt Brown, Shag Stunnebeck, to orient myself to what's going on with the youth programs, how things have gone, and to get a lay of the land for the needs that they have in order to grow the program. Others that have an impact, or that I need to have an impact with when it comes to establishing consistent communication. Custodial staff, particularly when it comes to facility use inside early in the season, both for open gyms and then into March for pitcher and catcher camp, as well as the early season full practice setups until we're able to get outside. That includes this other spring coaches, softball, track, whatever else needs to be inside. Need to be able to work with those folks and be on the same page, communicate well, so that we can all get the things we need accomplished and give each of the kids in each of those programs the best chance to succeed. And then lastly, be able to establish a working relationship and open channels of communication with those who handle the outdoor facilities, particularly playing at Fireman's and working with staff there who maintain the field and the ways that we as a baseball program can help them maintain and keep that park beautiful for use going forward. So that's my goal when it comes to the things that I want to do and act out. Consistent communication so that questions can be answered and as much clarity as possible can be brought to what we're going to do and what we'll be about. Good being the enemy of great, how will I take us to the next level? To me, first and foremost, great is a mindset. My opinion, it's one of the many reasons that kids leave in the masses that they do from the point of transition between the time that they get off the small fields and onto the big fields and then into high school. It comes down to what's between the ears, that 6 inches of gray matter, because the talent starts to even out as kids mature and become more equal physically as far as how much they're going to develop into their adult bodies. The mind becomes the separator. And primarily my goal, first and foremost, is to model those actions myself on a daily basis in everything I do, from the way that they see what I do and how I act. Weekly skull sessions would be included with the kids as part of practices. I also have a competitive skills curriculum that is authored by a Dr. Tom Hansen, who is one of the co-authors of Heads Up Baseball with Dr. Ken Ravizza, two of the pioneers of mental skills and mental toughness when it comes to sports. And the kids basically would be asked to spend about 20 minutes a week with that curriculum in order to help them establish routines and hold them accountable to growing in that area, because the only way that the kids are going to be able to maximize their abilities physically is to free their mind and have processes to deal with the things that the game will deal to them, particularly with baseball, which is such a game, especially on offense, that's based in failure. These sorts of messages would also be part of the weekly communication to parents. I want them to see the things that the kids will need not only to be great baseball players in order to unlock their full potential, but these are also life skills. I have grown in many ways, and one of the ways that I have is how I look at the way I teach the game and being very intentional about giving the kids skills that will impact them far beyond the field, which is why employers look and value those who play sports, high school, college, whatever the highest level that someone wishes to achieve or is able to pursue, because of the skills, particularly in that 6 inches of gray matter, that are vital for consistent success when it comes to life beyond sports. Summer baseball plans, well, for me, that's going to start with Matt, Shag, and Sam, communicating with them. And that harkens back to a moment ago. I need to know what it looks like, what's been good, what's been a challenge, in order to know where my efforts and the efforts of those in the high school program can help fit in. Sam has communicated with me about having signed up the American Legion team for a league that's going to be run by Belleville's head coach. Certainly then that's going to be one of my initial contacts to establish how that's going to work and what the setup is, schedule, and all of those particulars. Those are things I have a lot of experience with, having been a Legion coach for more than 15 years in multiple different locations. I've had many different levels of responsibility from anywhere from just coaching the team to collecting all of the dues, registering teams, the whole 9 yards. I've been scheduling the Tomahawk American Legion teams for the last number of years, working with the post, setting up umpires, all of the logistics. I'm familiar with and used to those processes, so I would certainly be on the forefront of that. When it comes to those incoming 8th and 9th graders, Matt, Shag, and Sam would be able to give me information, I'm sure, or at least directions on who I need to talk to and however I can support those actions, whether it comes from me recruiting and supporting those who coach it, or if it comes down to me needing to be a person that coaches one of those teams themselves. Yes, I can appreciate the concern with geography. At the same time, what I can tell you is I have made this work this year. I have also made geography that might not seem to make a lot of sense work previous. And we can get into that a little bit further if we do talk face to face. But the fact that I grew up in southeast Wisconsin, I have options as to how I can do that geographically. I am very blessed to have a wife that knows that this teaching and coaching are vital to the things that I do well, that are ways that I can give back to a community, a group of kids and people. And we have figured out a way to make those work and maintain a good relationship. I've known my wife for over 30 years and we've learned some hard lessons, but we're in a good spot with where our lives are at and our home life are at. So whatever it takes, coaching, supporting is what I am committed to be able to do to help the summer be part of the growth of Marshall's baseball program. As far as the plan to develop the specific youth part of the program, once I get that lay of the land from Matt and Shag in particular, my job is to support the operation and growth of the program. So an example in Tomahawk, I was able to collaborate particularly the last 3 years with one of my assistant coaches, who is now the head coach in Tomahawk, to recruit and reestablish an operational group to run the baseball program in Tomahawk. For example, when I started up there teaching and coaching in the fall of 2018, the program was administered by about 1.5 people. And 4 years in, I was able to facilitate the establishment and recruitment of 6 new people to facilitate the program. And our numbers there had stabilized as far as where they had trended from. It was a program that had drawn enough kids in the past where they only had to play within the community. There were 6 to 8 teams. Another step that we took in that group was reaching out to neighboring communities. In Tomahawk's case, Minocqua, Phillips, Merrill, we were able to establish games against some of those other communities, particularly at the 4th grade levels and above, so that kids were constantly not playing the same 1 or 2 groups of kids on different teams within the community and basically getting bored out of their minds of it about 3 weeks in. That has helped facilitate a little bit of renewed interest in the youth program. Another thing that I would bring up to Shag and Matt would be something I happened to see at the ABCA and do a little bit of digging on, a concept called speedball. It basically is baseball, some very slight rule and gameplay modifications, speed the game up and give kids many more opportunities when it comes to aspects of playing the game. Instead of getting 1, 2, or maybe no at-bats, depending upon how games went and the skill level at the time, particularly 6th grade and down, the game is a lot faster, and some of the rule modifications allow for many more opportunities to hit, to play different positions, and to be able to do the game activities and move the game faster. Because let's face it, when kids are young, we need to establish a love for the game at that level. And on top of knowing some of those rules and establishing that love of the game, it gives us a better chance of holding on to more of those kids as they get older. So that's certainly a concept I would run by those guys as far as an opportunity to change up a little bit and reinvigorate some life into the program if that's indeed what's necessary. So being available for the demands of the job, as far as someone that doesn't work in the district, there's a lot of options for this. In as I look at it, it's just a matter of what is workable. So obviously I would be driving from Prairie to Sac in the afternoons to come to practices and games. As far as practices go, obviously we hope that we're not indoors for a long stretch of time. When I'm talking long stretch, I'm talking more than about 3 weeks, and that would include the week of pitcher and catcher camp starting the week of March 16th. Indoors, I would go 4:30 or after, and I think that might line up well as allowing track and softball in particular to utilize indoor facilities after school. It would also give the baseball guys a chance to separate from school, to transition from being a student into a ball player, and also allow for time to kind of reorient. And what I mean by that is if there's academic need or support or homework time that's needed for those guys, there's a window to do it between the time school ends and the time that school would or that practice would start, whether that's at 4:35 or 5:30. And if they have the chance or need to go home, get a change of clothes, get a little bit to eat, then come back. You come back from home after being a student for 7-8 hours, you come back as a ball player. And that goes back to the mindset, the great being a mindset, transition from a student to a ball player where you're here, you're now, and you can devote 100% of your attention on being a ball player. Outdoors would be similar in the time frame. I'd look at 4:30, which would allow the exact same procedure for kids to happen, separate from the student hat into the baseball player hat, where they can dedicate that 100% focus to what's going on. Home and road games, options. For home games, a combination of the following. There are lights at Fireman's, at least based on Google Maps. I could be wrong, but if there are lights, one option would be for us to move start time to 5:15. If that's not an option, then certainly if I hear from you in a day or two about the possibility to go face-to-face, I would have a conversation with my principal about manipulating the last hour of my day. Our last class at Sauk goes from 2:17 to 3:25. Luckily for me in that case, that is a class that in essence could be taught completely online, self-paced by the student. Them being with me allows me to give guidance and support and help. However, most students, particularly since this is a second level class, I taught 2 sections of the first level class during the first 12 weeks of school. This is a group who is familiar with how the process is going to work. And the fact that the class starts the week of March 10th, I believe it is, they would have a couple of weeks to orient to how it would be taught prior to me having any need to leave before or during the hour at some point. And since that class is highly self-driven by the student, because I set up and schedule the work prior to them starting the class and they need to pace it out, I set weekly or daily goals for students depending upon the need for motivation for them. There is an easy possibility, provided it's agreeable to my principal, that those students could be in a different place as long as they're just overseen by an adult who may already be in a spot where there's little to no disruption of responsibilities of other staff members. So again, that's a conversation that I would expect to have with my administrators on my end if you choose to have me talk face to face during the point of this coming week. I would use that same window of opportunity when it comes to road games. And if that happens, what I can also tell you that I could bring to the table is the fact that I have a commercial driver's license. I have driven school trips in the yellow bus, and I say that because I'm also able to drive coach bus. If I'm able to work that day end or 5th hour, 2 o'clock departure time roughly, not only can I get there in order to be on the bus with the kids, I could drive it. It was mentioned, and I know that Sam worked and drove vans last year. Well, if JV and varsity are going at the same time, there would be a need for a bus. So if the issue last year wasn't the fact that there weren't buses available, but it was drivers, I can fill that need, get to Marshall, go to Right Way. Obviously, I would have a conversation with them become employed by Right Way, pick up a bus, hop the kids on, and we go to our road locations. If that would not work, then my pursuit would be the angle of staff members being on staff for baseball. Aaron Young and possibly Chris Seep. Aaron, I know, was the JV coach last year. Sam indicated the chance that she would be looking at coming back this year. Chris and Sam had also had a side conversation about being part of the program this year. I would certainly approach him. If all else failed as far as my departure time from SAWC, having staff members in the building that could then ride, provided obviously a driver would be available on the bus. But again, I know you're dealing with things that almost every district in the state is dealing with. So my first and best angle would be to be available to provide the answer, me being the driver. As far as my assistant staff looks, I kind of opened the door to that a little bit. I would start with Aaron and Chris as far as getting them reinvigorated, right, and bringing Aaron back is what I should say, and seeing if Chris is willing to be part of the staff this year. And from there, I know that Jake Miller and Tristan Ruelas were volunteers on the staff last year with Sam and his dad, John. I would certainly approach them as well about the prospect of continuing on as coaches when they're available. I also have a former player of mine who graduated from New Holstein in 2019, but he was on our varsity team as a sophomore in 2017, my last summer there, who is actually a FIAD teacher at Sun Prairie West. I would approach him about the possibility of helping out, seeing as Sun Prairie is only about a 10 or 15 minute trip from the west, to address any remaining needs on staff. Now, obviously, if those all pan out, I feel like we're in good shape. I have coached in a smaller staff in a similar size school, so if given the opportunity to make that call, certainly that's going to be one of my first priorities, and is establishing who is on staff and what the needs are going to be for who to cover. And then lastly, if I'm so qualified, why am I available? And believe me, I do appreciate that question. So here's what I would tell you. I did not realize until the last year or so how fortunate my baseball journey has been. So I have discovered that teaching and coaching are the things that get me excited and motivate me to be my best every day. And I have looked for ways to continue to grow day after day. Each career move that I have had, from broadcasting to nonprofit, from taking a promotion in broadcasting and moving, the nonprofit promotion and moving from Fond du Lac area to Manitowoc, and then switching from nonprofit management to education, those all were also accompanied by baseball moves. Those were all done by some combination of one or two things. They were either done to address a family need or professional growth needs. Because every time a switch happened, leading up to the switch, some amount of time before it, I always felt one of those internal nudges. You couldn't always put a word to it, or words or a sentence to it, but for me it was a feeling that there's something more. There's something else I need to do to get closer to fulfilling my mission for my time here on this earth. And where I am at right now, meaning the things that I am blessed to be able to do, I am as close as I've been to that in my entire life. It turns out, yes, I moved a lot of baseball. I have a lot of different baseball experiences, not only the coaching ones that I've talked about. I've had the chance to help at the Little League level and coach that level. I've run clinics. I would expect to do that as well as a high school coach going into next year, running kind of a preseason clinic for the youth kids and bringing them in, having the high school kids help teach it and facilitate it. Those are things that I was happy to do and did, had good attendance both in New Holstein and in Tomahawk. Would expect to do that in this program as well. But I didn't take those switches, for light. The reality was I prioritized my profession as far as my money earning profession and bet on myself when it came to baseball. And that's really what this comes down to right here. This was kind of the most unique and challenging switch, going from Tomahawk to Sauk Prairie, as far as particularly the reasons why I chose and felt the need to do it, to take another step professionally. And I'm betting on myself when it comes to the things I have done, what I have learned, and the opportunities that I'm confident will come as a result of the work that I have done, and where I know I'm going to go professionally because of the work that I am confident that I will be driven to do. If this situation, me deciding that that move was necessary or was not necessary for my professional growth and ability to best serve out what I was put here to do, I would not have had the conversation I had with Sam between November and December about ultimately being able to come over and help him on his staff. He wouldn't have confided and told me that things had happened to a point where he needed to step away as the head coach. I wouldn't be in the position where I'm close enough geographically, if we can make circumstances work, where I could legitimately apply for this opportunity to help the kids, the school, and the community when it comes to baseball in Marshall. I grew up going to a big school in Oconomowoc. I'm a farm kid at heart, so I'm a country kid at heart. I have taught and coached in small communities. I know and have seen firsthand how good high school programs and schools impact communities, both negatively and positively. So the fact that all of those things happened, I certainly didn't make the choices I did to be here knowing that this would be an opportunity. But the fact that we're sitting here having this conversation now, there's a reason behind it. Whatever it may be, whether the conversation ends after you watch this video or whether it continues after today, that remains to be seen. But I can tell you right now, from the variety of experiences and the depth of those experiences that I have been fortunate to gain in baseball since starting as a senior Babe Ruth coach in Oshkosh, starting in the summer of 1997, I am ready to hit the ground running. I am a person who loves the logistics, all those little things that you hear coaches complain about, the paperwork, the communication, all those little things outside of what you do on the field. Those also get me excited because I know that those things done well make the things on the field work all that much more smoothly. So I look forward to the possibility of having a continued conversation about leading the program this and in subsequent years, because at the same time, we don't know what opportunities may come up where I may have the opportunity to be in the community longer term when it comes to having an impact on the school and the kids. Thank you very much for the opportunity to have this discussion. I look forward to hearing back from you soon.